mix of the madness. John Brodsky is on KMJ right now.
Yes, sir. John Brodsky here with Aubrey Bettencourt.
That intro is like a throwdown.
Yeah.
It's like, bring it, bring it. You have something to say to me? Bring it.
Well, bring it.
Yeah.
If somebody has it, bring it. We have some water news today, Aubrey, and this is right up your alley.
Goody.
Aubrey is the executive director of the California Water Alliance, keeps an eye on all these water issues. So do I. I'm also with the Families Protecting the Valley, which is another water group. Mm-hmm. So see what we think about this. Supreme Court was possibly going to take up this Delta Smelt issue. It had been appealed from the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, which basically upheld the pumping rules that are in effect. But the Supreme Court today says they're not going to take the case, which means that everything stays the same. Is this anything that surprises you?
No. No. When this story first came up, I think it was last week, and I know I heard it mentioned on this program. I think there was a lot of excitement, and you know, as it should. We're grasping for any bit of hope we can get, and the more we pelt at the court system, the more we're bringing up good questions, and I think that's a positive thing. But you got to remember, it's up to the Supremes to decide whether or not they were going to take up the case. And I think that everybody just kind of thought, oh, good, it's going to the Supremes. No. It was going to be reviewed on whether or not the Supremes would actually rule. And as we know today, they decided not to take the case up, which means they leave the existing Ninth Circuit ruling in place.
Yeah. Unfortunately. But, this goes back to when Oliver Wanger, federal judge, was involved in all this. Mm-hmm. His basically point is the law needs to change. I'm a judge. I don't want to be an activist judge and do what I think is right. I need to go by the law. And until you guys get the law changed, you can't get a judge to change it for you.
Right.
And I think that's where we are. The Supreme Court may, some of them, be in sympathy with us because the problem with the law as it is now, it doesn't take any economic impacts into account. It just says protect the smelt. This whole case was based on, but what about us?
Right.
What about people? That's what Oliver Wanger said. And he asked for testimony about that when he was reviewing this, because he said he thought the people should be taken into account. But he says, but the law doesn't account for that.
Yeah.
And so when we go to Dianne Feinstein and Barbara Boxer and the environmentalists and try to change this law, they say you can't touch it. Well, if we can't touch it, we can't fix it.
Right. It's my position has always been that you've got a very well-intentioned law from 1974.
Yeah.
The Endangered Species Act was signed into law in 1973-74 by Richard Nixon, and it was to protect Shamu.
Seemed like a nice law.
It's a great idea.
Who's not for protecting endangered species?
Not at all.
Yeah.
But the problem is we have a law that has now failed because it's a 40-some-year-old law using 21st century technology and 21st century priorities, and it no longer works. I will defend this point to kingdom come. It no longer works. It's an outdated law. And as a result, the species are failing.
That's the other thing.
The other economic, we know this. This audience knows the true human reality of this law being implemented to its fullest extreme under circumstances that it's no longer working. But the flip side of that is the Endangered Species Act has less than a 1% success rating over 40 years. It's had more species listed in the past 10 to 20 years than in its entire history prior to that combined. And there is no definition of recovery within the law. So even if we recovered a species, we wouldn't know. There's no definition of it. There's no requirement on scientific review. Did you know,
There's
John,
no definition of success.
There's no definition of success. Here's another thing, John. Did you know you and I could get together and get a petition going to protect a species, submit that to the federal agencies that operate the law, and they would actually have to review the species and potentially list it.
I guess there's no way
petition to list a species.
I guess we can't petition to list humans. I guess we're not endangered.
Well, I don't.
Too many of
parts
us.
of sub-Saharan Africa would disagree with you.
Yeah.
I think that brings up a very good point. Parts of the world, I think, would disagree with you when you have infant mortality rates and unbelievable percentages. I think that deserves a disagreement.
But the main point to me from this decision today is I don't blame the Supreme Court.
No.
What they did, I think, is they looked at the law and said that the Ninth Circuit, as much as I disagree with the Ninth Circuit about just about everything. It looks like they upheld the law as it is written.
Right.
And if we don't get that law changed, we are going to forever be in this box. And when the other side says you can't touch the law, then, okay, well, then we're not going to get it fixed.
It's the old, and that's another thing where the Supremes, I don't blame them either for not taking it up because
he said it's a legislative matter.
Well, it's a legislative matter. They are within the law. The law is written extremely vague. Now, I've butted heads with people who say, no, the law is perfect. They're implementing it wrong. Well, no, I disagree based on the argument I've already made. But I think where the Supremes are, this is a small case in the sense of it's very regional. It's very finite. It's very specific. And the Supremes, they traditionally, their job is to rule on things that are going to have a larger implication, a nationwide implication. And this was not that. And the Endangered Species Act as much as natural resources and the environment does not poll well within the public concern, it's the freaking third rail. I mean, you can't touch it. If you want to say you want to reform the Endangered Species Act, the next question is, when did you stop clubbing baby seals for fun?
Exactly.
When did you stop shooting wolves from a helicopter? That is not the case. My biggest case for reforming the Endangered Species Act is to protect species.
Well, the thing about
and
species,
to protect our resources. We need to reestablish balance. We're looking at a changing world where the impact on our natural resources is so important to the future existence of this planet, that the laws that we implemented to correct things that we have technologically engineered ourselves out of, they don't apply anymore. Carbon is the carbon emission thing is interesting. I saw an interview with Jay Leno recently, who's now doing a show on cars on YouTube. He made up an interesting point. We use less oil than we did 60 years ago, and we have like 300 million more cars.
Yeah.
We are going to engineer ourselves out of this. The laws aren't keeping up with the science and technology that we have.
Well, the problem with the Delta is that all of this water that they've taken from us hasn't helped.
No, this concept of flow criteria is really what it comes down to, and I think it's an antiquated concept.
Well, plus you have all these other problems in the Delta.
Yeah.
We know all about the sewage from the Sacramento sewage plants and all the other sewage plants around there. Sacramento's been ordered to clean up, but not until 2023. So while they have 10 years, or now 9, to clean up, we get stuck with the rules.
Yeah.
They get a reprieve, but we don't. We also have the striped bass, which eats Delta Smelt. Nobody seems to care about that.
Well, and this goes to, I mean, when I say flow criteria, really quick for the audience, flow criteria is this concept that we push more water through the estuary in order to fix all these problems that you're bringing up, John. The pollution. So solution through dilution. That's the concept. We're going to flush more water to dilute it so that there's less parts per billion or whatever. Fixing flows so that the fish don't go the places where the striped bass might eat them. The fact of the matter is we've been doing that for 30 years, 20, 30 years, and it's still not working. What's the definition of insanity?
There you go.
And now, because we have a law that politically we refuse to address for, I think, all valid reasons, to establish balance, to think long-term about what does it mean to protect our natural resources, the foundation of life for the environment and for humans who are part of that. We have it's left itself open to interpretation and manipulation, and I think the law is being abused, and it infuriates me.
I know, but here we are.
Yeah.
Here's the latest decision.
But
because if you don't change the law, the judges are stuck with the law.
I agree, but you know what? We have to be careful. Right now, we feel it here. When the rest of the country starts feeling it, the majority of species are listed west of the Mississippi River. You've got to get the East Coast on board. This issue is going to come to a head. It's going to come to a head because of its failure to protect the environment. It's going to come to a head because of the impact, because of the need for our natural resources. The rest of the world other countries in the world are making plans to protect their food supply as a way of boosting their economy. Ireland has a 2050 food and economic supply priority. India has the exact same thing. I'm looking at other countries doing the exact same thing, and yet the United States is not. And I think we're going to get left behind as a result.
We seem to be fine with getting our food somewhere else because they don't seem to have any priority getting it from here.
Fall of the Roman Empire. Fall of the Roman Empire, John.
But if people want to have a little fun, just start Googling around and ask the question, how many species are there? Have you ever done that?
No.
Just
how many species are there?
How many species are there?
I know they're always declaring new species every year. They find new critters.
Oh, yeah. They cannot document them fast enough. They can only guesstimate how many species there are. People, they guesstimate, I think something like, I'm going to say 70,000 species have been documented. There are guesstimates. There are as many as 10 million species. We don't even know.
Well, that goes into an interesting, another take on this, and I know you're coming up on a break, but the law allows you to define species not based on genetics, but based on location. So while smelt in Sacramento are genetically identical to smelt in Oklahoma, under the law in the United States, they're classified as two distinctly different species. Hello, I've got a problem.
Well, today's just another bad day for the Central San Joaquin Valley.
I think the smelt are missing out. They need to do like mail order brides. They need to mail order smelt brides out of Michigan and Oklahoma and all those other.
Get them over here.
Yeah, get them over here. Let's change the genetics. It'll be good. Some genetic diversity. It'll help their health.
But in case you missed the story, Supreme Court kept in place the environmental orders here in California, Central Valley, to protect the smelt and limit the pumping of water from the Delta. So
there'll be more.
We're right where we started.
There'll be more. The law will keep getting challenged.
490-5858 or 800-776-5858. John Brodsky, Aubrey Bettencourt with a B on KMJ.
Hey there, it's me, Ray Appleton. I don't say this enough probably, but thank you. Thank you so much for...
John Brodsky with Aubrey Bettencourt. Aubrey is the executive director of the California Water Alliance, so a good person to have on as this decision just came down today, the smelt thing, the Supreme Court.
You too, though. This is good.
Yeah.
I love it when you put a couple water dogs in the room.
So, they just decided today not to decide. So by not deciding, they decided.
By not deciding, they've decided. Yes, what is the old adage? But inaction is action.
That's right.
But yeah, it's going to keep coming up.
B, you're on KMJ. Thanks for calling.
Yes, I have a question, then I'll hang up. I was told that the smelt was brought in to California, that it's not a native of California, to feed the salmon, and I was wondering if you'd heard anything about that.
I think that's true.
It is true. The Delta smelt is a non-native species of California.
Yeah, but still a protected species.
That's still a protected species.
They call it the canary in the coal mine species.
Yes. It's an indicator species.
Indicator species.
Meaning the health of the smelt population, because it is, like the caller just said, B, I think, and sorry you hung up, it is kind of the base of the food chain. So the concept is if the food supply is doing well, then the ecosystem is doing well. If the food supply is not doing well, then the ecosystem is not doing well.
And, we would all feel a lot better about this. We wouldn't feel good, but we'd feel better if the Delta was getting healthier.
I know, but it's not.
But it's not. So they keep doing the same thing, taking more and more water to make the Delta healthier, but it keeps getting worse and worse.
That raises the question, is the goal to really solve it?
Doesn't seem like it, does it?
This goes back to my core premise, which is
they don't want farming in the Central Valley.
If we're going to protect the environment, then do it like we mean it.
Yeah, but that's not what it's about. It's all about politics and other things. Eric, thanks for calling.
Yes, I'm a farmer in the San Joaquin Valley, and I have a point. I think they need to add the Farmer Endangered Species Act.
Yep.
And that might straighten it out. If they can't get rid of it, just add the farmer. And my ancestors have been here since 1850s. So they were here before the Delta smelt.
Yep, you probably were.
Yeah, good on you, man. And can't thank you enough for keeping your hopes up and keep putting your boots on like you do every day. Especially in times like these. I think that's a great point, a great talking point. But let's flip it on its head and maybe look at what these other countries are doing, which is creating economic incentive and protections for their agricultural sector as a means of boosting their economy, which is a national security issue, but also local food supply. So maybe we protect the farmer not under the Endangered Species Act, but in its own way. It
would be nice. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
490-5858. Yeah, this whole smelt thing, it's just, it's been going on so long. I mean, the water takeaways in this valley have been going on for over 20 years now. Mm-hmm. And it's like every year gets worse and worse and worse. And what's amazing to me is you go out there in the farmland and it's getting more and more expensive.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. The price of land is...
So what's the deal with that?
Well, okay. If you got water on it and you have a water supply to it, it's extremely expensive. The other reason is it's like anything in California, because of the regulations and requirements we have. It's just property in general is expensive here in California. So there's the potential of ag land, of course. There's the fact that it is in California and it has all these requirements, which makes it more expensive to just have land or property. But I think the third part of this, and it was in The Economist just this last week, which is agricultural investment is outperforming the market right now.
Yeah.
And so there's huge, there's a lot of money, investment capital being poured into the ag sector if it can produce a product.
So maybe they think if they dump a lot of money in, that they can make it back and more before this whole thing collapses with the water situation, because you still have groundwater, and even though I have new groundwater regs, they really don't kick in for years.
2.
Well, you got to have your plan in 2, but then you get another 3 or 4 or 5 before you have to implement it, and then some places even up to 20 years.
But the GSAs, they're not. Even though you have time, they have the authority to regulate prior to your complete implementation. So that's a backwards thing in that.
Right. But I'm just
confusing.
thinking the people investing.
I see what you're saying. The interesting thing, or the part that I think is complicated here is, and what I would be interested to know is, while there is a lot of capital going into ag land, it might be leaving California, because I've heard from major investment firms that I know have invested in California ag land, and when I go and I speak at conferences in Scottsdale, Arizona, or wherever else, they've approached me and said, we're terrified because all of a sudden our water supply has dried up, because the result of the drought was areas that hadn't quite felt the extremes felt it now. And so those who thought they were protected or not, they've found their vulnerabilities, and investors don't like that. So they may be pulling out and looking elsewhere. And I don't like to sell out my state, but I do a lot of business with state agricultural departments throughout the country. And they're like, so is it safe to say we should recruit out of California?
Looks like the answer would be yes, huh? Nick, you're on KMJ.
Hey, I'm one of the farmers that actually has my water rights listed on the deed. My deed is so old that it was signed by Mr. Wrigley back in, I think it was 1906.
Wow.
It says that I own the water underneath the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how is this going to affect me? Do I lose my rights?
Well, you're gonna be regulated in some degree, because they're going to have to find out how much water is coming out of the ground to be able to regulate it. So you're probably going to have to put some kind of meter on there and find out how much you're taking out, how much is going back in. Isn't that what's going on, Aubrey?
Yeah, the groundwater is where they're going to come after you on that. They're going to look at your usage.
It's your water, but they're going to regulate how much you can use. Mm-hmm. See, right now you can use all you want, right?
Can they seize my water rights? In effect, can they tell me I no longer own them? See, that's part of eminent domain. They can't just step in and do that.
I think in a way they can.
Yes and no, Nick. That's the biggest question. That's one of the key questions with this new groundwater ruling. Is it an eminent domain without compensation? And I have met with a number of attorneys about this, and I would highly recommend you seek out a very good attorney to talk about this, because there's so much unknown within it, but that is definitely a key critical component. And I wish I could give you an answer, but I am a firm believer that it looks like eminent domain without compensation. So
one of the other things that I'm looking at, too, is that it's my land and it's my water down there. This is my feeling. And that, the state wants to store their water under my land, and they want to charge other people for it. I want compensation for that, too.
That's an interesting point as well, and I think that's something that should be brought up too. I believe that's something that came up down in the San Fernando area once years ago. These are all of these things as they're now adjudicating these basins and declaring these certain areas of impact or moderate impact. Or this is it's terrifying, the authority that the law gave without any specifics whatsoever. And so
it's going to be very, very interesting.
It'll be very, very interesting. I hate to say it because Shakespeare said kill him first, but lawyer up.
Lawyers are going to get rich.
Oh,
Again.
Yeah. I should have gone to law school.
But water law is already so complex. And, Nick, as you say, right now, the law is that you own that water under your land, and you can still pump it until these laws go into effect. But when they do, that's when you're going to need to have your attorney.
On his original deed, it says that. Yeah. But the Constitution of California says you don't have the right to the water under your ground. It says you have the right to extract the water from under your ground.
Yeah. Nobody owns the water, I guess, and when it comes right down to it.
And that's what's the bigger assault here is a redefinition of the water in California as the people's water as opposed to being a property right.
Yeah. So this is going to be, if you weren't in farming, it would be fun to watch. But for farmers, it's not going to be very much fun.
Boy, it's just such
in other words, we have the right to extract the water, but they have the right to charge us for it. That's their contention.
That's their contention right now, yeah.
Well, they have the right to regulate how much you use.
And their basis for it is it's for the greater good. It has nothing to do with, it's not. And that's the other question. Is it a tax? Is it a fine? What is it? It's a fee. We mandate you enroll, and we're going to charge you for using your own property. Excuse me?
Yeah. Well, here you have, they've taken all the surface water. They've left farmers with only one option, which is to pump groundwater. Mm-hmm. And now they're accusing farmers of abusing that, the only option they have. And now they say, now you must implement your own rules to regulate your groundwater. And if you don't, we will. So in other words, shoot yourself or we'll kill you.
Well, and even then they don't even know. Here's something that's very interesting that needs to get out there. Do we have time for me to say it?
Okay. Hang on.
I'll hold my thought.
490-5858. Thank you, Nick. 490-5858. Aubrey and John, KMJ News Time, Tony Sunoco.
Low-income youngsters enrolled in Head Start programs do better.
Just getting in the mood for something here. I'm not sure what. 490-5858. Talking about this Delta Smelt Case. Supreme Court. We had hopes that the Supreme Court would take this case up on a challenge from the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, but they didn't, so they let that stand. And what stands is status quo, which means we still got no water. Mm-hmm. Matt, you're on KMJ.
Oh, my God, this water. Yeah, we're going to beat this thing to death. And you guys were talking about it. The attorneys are going to be the ones that get rich. Politics and attorneys, it's enough to make you sick. But if the people of the state of California don't wake up and see who feeds the world, not just this country, they're missing a bunch. And unfortunately, this state needs a revolution, and I think that's what needs to happen. Because if not, the attorneys are going to get richer, and the government is going to control more and more. And you and everybody sitting here, anybody with any common sense knows that's the motive of the government, is to control everything.
Well, the problem with the revolution in the state of California is that it's just, I grew up in Southern California, and I always tell people this story. I don't recall ever wondering where the water came from. Mm-hmm. Of course, we knew we had the Mono Lake stuff and, all that history. Mm-hmm. But I don't recall anybody ever saying, where does this water come from anyway? They don't really know. They're kind of oblivious down there. They're not going to revolt over water until it hits them. And it's not going to hit them. You know why it's not going to hit them? Because they've got enough votes to make sure it doesn't. And although they're oblivious, nobody wants to wake up the sleeping giant. Mm. So they're always going to get their water, in my opinion.
Yeah,
you're probably right. Go ahead.
No, the sleeping giant is starting to wake up.
You think so?
Oh yeah.
Well, I'd like to think that
they had a great plan in place to have a 3-year reserve. Well, guess what? It's a 4-year drought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
you're right.
So they're. Yeah. Go ahead, Matt.
And this year is going to be telltale. I think if this thing goes into the way it's looking right now, mm-hmm. you might see some eyeballs finally starting to open up.
Well, the thing is, when you talk about Southern California, I'm not sure how many of them care about us. So although I believe no matter what happens, Southern California will be taken care of, I don't believe no matter what happens, we will be taken care of. If they need to cut us out of the deal to take care of themselves, we're going to be cut out of the deal.
That's always been a huge
So when
area,
they talk about the tunnels, the pumps, and all these things, they want it for them. And they would probably cut us out of the deal for $5 a month on their bill.
But unfortunately, I think what it'll take more than just this water is when they walk into the grocery store and there's nothing there.
Well,
and unfortunately,
yeah.
that's what I kind of mean too about a revolution.
But there'll be something. There'll be from China. There'll be from Mexico. Right. And what the funny thing is, we bring in all this food that doesn't have all the regulations we have.
It has none of the regulations we have. And I think the to your point, Matt, is because I've sat with major reporters of major newspapers down in Southern California, and they've flat out said, why are we growing food for export? And if we don't get it from the valley, we'll get it from somewhere else. And, oh, well, that's the way the global economy works. The problem is, we want this local concept. I think we need to tap into that. I think we need to tap into this idea of food security, food safety, food affordability. This is about providing a healthy lifestyle for all stratas of the economy. And the best way to do that is to grow high quality, healthy, affordable food at home.
And we do that. And unfortunately, what it'll take is that what happens to a country that can't feed themselves?
Well, it collapses. The Roman Empire did. It falls apart. Roman Empire failed because it relied on foreign sources of food and fuel, and it fell apart as a result.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm laughing, and not in a good way. I'm laughing because hopefully people will understand that you just hit the nail on the head.
But if you're waiting for a revolution in California, I got bad news for you.
Though, Matt, I hate to bring you back to this whole idea. I know politics gets in the way of it, and why can't we just have common sense and do the thing? But at the same time, you're either at the table or you're on the menu. So if we want to see a revolution where local grown, domestically grown food is a priority, we have to jump in there and say, politicians, this is a priority. And that means partnering up with unusual partners to say, hey, this is a priority. Right. And the foundation of that being a priority and that healthy lifestyle for all stratas of the economy, they talk about income inequality and poverty levels. Yeah. We have to jump in there and say the foundation of providing those basic needs is a reliable, clean water supply.
Yeah. And unfortunately, right now where we're at, I feel, is that nobody wants to give and nobody wants to work together. And you're right. If each side would give, but here's the problem. Everybody's so scared to give in, I think.
Well, look on our side, I mean, we are the compromisers. But my God, we've compromised every drop of water out of this valley. It's the other side that won't compromise. They won't give an inch. We want to. What do you want to raise the dam? What is it, Don Pedro? They want to raise. Is that the one they want to raise 50 feet or something? Is Exchequer Dam? They want to raise it 50 feet to hold another 70,000 acre feet of water. But it'll take a half a mile of the Merced River, which is a wild and scenic river, 123-mile long river, wild and scenic. It'll cover a half a mile, like less than 0.5%.
Right.
And they won't compromise on that.
Right.
So if we won't compromise on that, what can we get from the other side? And they're always talking, we'll talk, we'll talk to anybody.
I think you're right. You've got galvanized positions at the top. That's where we've got to work the local connections. And I think there's a lot of power in Southern California at the local level, the you and me level, the business owners, the local chambers, the local, the people who are the people who are having to hand out, take care of their communities. They have a lot of political power. It's about us with our issue, taking it out of the valley and going down there and handing it to them and saying, you know what? We totally get what you're trying to accomplish, and we're going to help you and support your community because look at how this affects that. And recruiting them to put pressure on their politicians to make it a priority, that'll wake them up.
Matt, thank you.
Okay, thank you guys so much.
Yeah.
Take care.
Hello, John. You're on KMJ.
Yeah, hi, guys. This whole thing, I'm so frustrated. What we need to all do here, somebody talked about revolution, we all need to revolt. And the bottom line here is survival of us, the human species here. We own this land. This land is ours. It's for us. God put us here as the major species, not these others. And water is the gift of life. That's the bottom line, right? Without water, we're not going to be here. And
but the other side uses that argument too. They say without water, these protected species would not be here, and they're the canaries in the coal mine, and the whole food chain collapses, so we got to protect that.
Well, I'll tell you what. Why don't we take the billions and billions of dollars they're talking about with a stupid train and put that towards desalination plants all up and down this coast?
Well, that's a good idea. You know what the problem is? Even though we pass a bond every now and then, and we pass a groundwater regulator, there's no comprehensive water plan for this state, which would include desal, which would include all kinds of things. Mm-hmm. And so let's put a whole plan together.
Mm-hmm. Well, sure.
But they don't want to do that because that makes too much sense. They're not really trying to solve the problem.
Exactly.
You know?
No common sense.
Well,
and too much of this infighting and political bickering.
Yeah, so long as there's a problem, there's a need to get funding to fix it. And that's the mother's milk of it all right there. If I would apply that to whether it's immigration reform or this or whatever it is, if I lose my problem that I'm trying to solve, I lose my job. I'm not talking about me personally. Real quick, I'm not talking about me personally, but I'm thinking in general. If I'm
war on poverty,
if
you solve poverty, you don't have the
bureaucrat, and my whole sole job has been this one thing, and I solve the problem. Now what?
Well, find something else to do.
Right, exactly. So I think you bring up a good point, and I would challenge you. I think you bring up an excellent point in the sense that we are the top of the food chain, and we are the most dominant species, and as a result, we have a responsibility to the resources that we use, and that goes for providing for our society, but also providing for the resources that we use to provide for our society. And so this 21st century challenge of how we balance natural resource management with economic development is really, I think California is the first case study of that.
Well, when people start going hungry and they're saying, "Where's our food?" they're going to look back and say, "Look, we're the greatest, one of the greatest food-producing areas in the whole damn world." Mm-hmm. And when it's not here anymore, then what?
Well, see, that's the problem. You know, as we dry up and we have all these regulations, and they talk about building dams and building tunnels, which are decades perhaps down the road, if they even ever get built, we will all be dried up and blown away in the dust.
Well, and you've got
too little, too late.
Yeah, you've got an interesting wing of ideology out there that says it's our moral imperative to import from other countries as a way of propping up their economy. I don't think that's necessarily true, but you know, there is that agenda out there, and then it's a real living, breathing thing. I've heard it for a long time.
We have to start looking at it as a global situation where we're all here to.
Well, you know, one of the problems, as you know, is that we can't even get the people on our side on the same side.
Yeah, that's a problem. That is an issue. Herding cats comes to mind. Exactly.
A lot of us are in this battle together, but we don't even agree with each other.
And it's a typical divide and conquer thing. And John, you bring up a good point looking at it from a global perspective. I agree with you. I think rise above a little bit more. And a great example would be, you know, I always laugh at the hubris of AB 32, the cap and trade, California cap and trade mandate, that California is going to offset the world. When you look at China and India, Australia passed its own version of AB 32. Australia has half the population we do, and yet the hubris of they're going to offset carbon emissions.
But didn't they cancel it?
They canceled it. They had a big reformation in their government, and they canceled it. But again, I think that's another part of this. I really, truly think, as much as we have all of this stuff going on in the world and ideological battles and the clash of civilizations, and it's going to be, you know, the next global conflict will be about ideology, I really think the bigger conflict is going to be over natural resources and human growth.
Well, you know, environmentalists, when you talk about feeding the world, they don't care.
No.
Because they think there's too many people on the planet anyway. They'd like it to be down to about 1 to 2 billion instead of 7 or 8 or 9. So when you talk about, remember Robert Malthus and Malthusian theory was that, you know, the population would explode and you wouldn't be able to feed the planet. Mm-hmm. So that actually would have been perfect for environmentalists because we just all would have starved.
Mm-hmm.
The worst thing that happened for environmentalists was that we were able to feed the planet because
Right.
farming innovated, and we've been able to grow food and feed the planet.
Mm-hmm.
So now they have to go another way. They have to find another way to say that this doesn't work. And what it is now is we're destroying the environment because we're using all the resources.
Right.
So instead of not being able to feed the planet, now the problem is you can feed the planet, and that's no good either. 490-5858, Aubrey Bettencourt, John Brodsky, KMJ.
Good morning. I'm Tony Tinoco in the KMJ News Center. More of the John Brodsky Show coming up.
Thanks for joining us today. John Brodsky with my special guest host, Aubrey Bettencourt, who is the Executive Director of the California Water Alliance. So, Aubrey, I want to thank you again for coming in today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's fun.
Enjoyed our conversation about the Golden Globes and movies. I didn't know you were such a movie buff.
I'm a huge. I could do a whole show.
We got to tentatively book the day after the Oscars here.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Because
That'd be a blast.
we're going to get into that.
Yeah.
And I will have seen all the movies. And like I say, I'm not really a movie critic, but we all kind of...
We all are. We know what we like.
We know what we like.
We know what we like. We know what we don't like.
I don't know if it's an award-winning thing or not, but I know I like it.
Well, at the end of the day, we vote, like the caller said, we vote with our pocketbook. So...
Yeah, but the problem is you vote and then you don't like it and you already voted.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I mean, and that's the I love me part
I gotta
of it.
pay to find out if I voted right.
That's the Hollywood I love me part of it too. Though now I've got Apple TV and I can watch. I'm blown away. I can watch stuff that's in the theaters at home.
Yeah, but you still
I have to pay for it, obviously.
But just like I say, you're paying up front.
But
and then
my popcorn's free.
Not free.
I can hit pause. I can talk.
Yeah, yeah. You can pause, go to the bathroom.
Exactly.
Are you a football fan?
I love sports. I love football. I can't say that I follow it religiously, but I know the game. It's not like I don't know the game. So.
You could make a case that this is the biggest football weekend of the year.
Yeah.
Although most people would say that's a Super Bowl weekend. But with the playoffs and the college national championship game tonight, it's a pretty big weekend. Now, the reason I ask if you're a football fan, because I'm not really, I'm a college football fan. I'm more into this college championship than I am the pro stuff.
Yep.
But this time of year, I kind of get involved with the pro stuff a little bit because they're in the playoffs, getting close to the Super Bowl. Games are getting a little better. Yesterday, Dallas was playing Green Bay. Are you interested in that game at all?
My Facebook friends were.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Not you, though, so much, huh?
No.
So anyway, I'm watching this game. At the end of this game, the Dallas player makes a catch right on the goal line, right at the end. Well, it's actually, there's a few minutes left in the game. He makes a catch on the goal line. You hear anything about this? Okay, so you're familiar with what I'm talking about. I think to any average football fan like myself, this looked like a catch. I'm not a Dallas fan, Green Bay fan. I just wanted to see a good game, which I did. Right. But it looked like a catch. But the refs ruled it wasn't a catch for some reason that even after they explained it, I didn't understand. Do you have any idea what I'm talking about?
Yes and no.
Yes and no. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I get what you're saying. So what they explained it how?
Well,
why
said.
did they say it wasn't a catch? Let's
just
for those
I
of
will
us that
try
to
explain this.
To me why they called it.
Normally, when you catch a football, they try to determine whether you had control of the football.
Yes.
And if you had control of the football and then you hit the ground and the ball comes loose, it's ruled dead when it hits the ground.
Correct.
That's what it looked like to me. It looked like he had the ball, and when he hit the ground, it came loose. Although he never really dropped it. It never, it came right back into his hands.
Okay.
But it seemed to me, in a normal circumstance, that would just be a dead ball, their ball, right where the ball landed. But they said something about he's got to make something that's consistent with a football move after he catches the ball.
Like a forward movement?
I don't know.
Or what do we...
They never explained
this. Is this one of those, like, how many knees were on the ground thing?
I don't know. I mean, they had the rules guy on. He explained it. Everybody on TV goes, thank you very much. And I'm sitting there wondering what the heck he just said.
Yes.
Because I still don't know.
I think GQ summed it up. The Cowboys got screwed. America perplexed how to feel.
Well, like I said, I'm not a big Cowboy fan.
Yeah.
I don't mind seeing them lose. No big deal to me.
Right.
I just hate to see when you have a big play at the end of a game and the refs make a call that sometimes is just wrong, but sometimes you just don't get what the call is. And in this case, I just challenge anybody, if you haven't seen this play, if you watch this play on video, And ask yourself, is that a catch or is that not a catch? You have to say that's a catch. It's just that simple. Mm-hmm. But they ruled it wasn't. And I'm baffled.
So and the implications so that leaves Dallas loses. Green Bay moves on. And where's that put things in the scheme of things here?
Well, Green Bay moves on to get to play Seattle.
Okay.
But
which
I think whoever won this game is going to be in trouble anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I have to admit with that.
But
because I caught the Seattle game.
But I just hate to see the refs take the ball out of the hands of the players. Now everybody said that technically the call was right, all the announcers, and I just say, okay, if that call is right, that rule is bad because the rule. I just say, if you see the video, Aubrey, he caught the ball.
I'm trying to find it.
He caught the ball.
Here it is.
End of story. You got the video?
Yeah, I got it here. I'm going to watch the video. You should put this on KMJ so everybody knows what's going on.
Yeah. Well, if you're not a football fan, you probably have no idea what I'm talking about.
That would look like a catch, actually.
It looks like a catch, does it not?
Or are they saying that he fell down before?
They're saying that he has to, after he catches the ball, make some kind of football move. Research this a little bit.
I see what they're saying. Okay, I can see what they're saying, that because he
essentially
fell down. Yeah.
But you always fall down when you get tackled. Hey, Ray's coming up next. I'm sure he'll have a lot to say about this Delta Smelt and other issues on KMJ. Thanks for joining us. Aubrey Bettencourt, John Brodsky.